My name is Professor Michael Henderson, and I am the course leader of this brilliant course, the Bachelor of Learning Design and Technology. I've got to say that because I created it and it gives me goosebumps to teach in it. So I'm really glad that you've come along this evening to learn a little bit about it. But before I start, let me first of all acknowledge the Australian peoples that Monash live and work on their land. So Monash University recognises that its Australian campuses are located on the unceded lands of the people of the Kulin Nations and pays its respects to the elders past and present. So it's a good reminder to us that the lands that we work on and the places that we visit and see, it's all part of a learning journey. And that's what the Bachelor of Learning Design and Technology is all about, is figuring out how we can improve that learning experience, no matter what context you're in. So one of the first questions I often get asked is, what is a learning designer? Well, okay. Learning design is a profession that's been around for decades and decades, but it's one of those professions that often sits within companies and businesses, organizations, and it's a particular position where they're trying to create really effective learning experiences, whether it's for someone in the workforce, in a corporate setting, or within the government or military, or even in education such as universities. Essentially, learning designers understand how people learn. They need to understand the theories and what makes people tick. They need to have the theories of learning, theories of education, theories of teaching. All of these things are different. And they need to understand what motivates people, what helps the brain process information, what helps people transfer an understanding of a situation into effective practice. If you can think about all the best learning experiences you've ever had, whether it might be when you were at school, or whether you were in a workplace somewhere, or in learning a hobby. If you can think about those fantastic learning experiences, the kind of things that made you feel really excited and, sort of had that kind of impact on you that meant that you could take this idea and you wanted to pursue it, you could build upon those skills. Well, what was so special about those moments? That's what learning design tries to figure out. It tries to figure out how we can take these powerful learning moments and repeat it across people and over different contexts. So they create personalized learning content and experiences. They're trying to engage with their audience, with their learners, and the learners could be as young as small children, but often is in the adult area, where you're in corporate settings or military, government, etc. They work in community organizations, and they're trying to help adults in these cases learn the skills that they need in their workforce or in their lives. Interesting enough, learning designers work in a lot of places that you might not expect, including in games companies, in early childhood programs. And we'll get back to that in a moment. But at the end of the day, learning designers are trying to figure out how to make learning experiences accessible, effective, and scalable. So I mentioned before that learning designers work across a lot of different settings. So there are learning designers at Virgin. I've been working directly with some learning designers in Qantas, trying to create effective simulations for pilots and for air crew. We've got learning designers in Mathletics, and of course there's Bluey and Sesame Street. All these programs are informed by learning designers who are saying, how can we turn this media content, these experiences, into effective learning experiences? But it's also Amazon and HelloFresh. I was just working a couple of days ago with learning designers at ANZ Bank and Commonwealth Bank, with PTV, so train drivers learning how to drive trains. I was working with a learning designer who was developing those materials and experiences for them. So learning designers work across so many different contexts. What that means is that you can also specialize. If you are interested in, for instance, people engaging in games and entertainment, then you might specialize your learning design career that way. If you're really interested in helping people figure out how to become leaders in their profession, then that's a place that you can specialize. There are whole industries devoted to the idea of not just teaching people basic skills or workplace skills, but also leadership and talent development. So learning design is one of those creative, interesting fields that, depending on your interests, you can sort of lead in a lot of different directions. And we'll come back to maybe some of those stories in a moment. So as I mentioned before, learning design is a profession that's been around for a while. In fact, learning design is related to a profession called instructional design. If you are coming from, say, North America, you might have heard of instructional design, which is a more popular term there. In Australia, we use learning design as probably the most popular term for this profession. Instructional design in Western histories goes back to World War II and learning how the science of learning and how to help, in that case, military personnel to learn things. So there's been many, many years of development of how we're trying to figure out how the brain works, how we process information, how we pick up skills, how we transfer knowledge into practice, and how to sort of develop learners of all ages. So this industry has been around for a while, so it doesn't really surprise me to know that it continues to strengthen, especially as we know with the global pandemic of COVID, there was a huge shift in everyone's understandings across all sectors of the importance of supporting staff and the community through online learning. And so, of course, that then meant that there was even stronger demand for learning designers to support the businesses or whoever it might be that's trying to deliver these things. So in some wonderful market research that our team did, they've identified that there's a 21.7% projected growth, and it's fueled by technology and a growing desire to learn on demand. And again, we can connect that back to recent shifts, such as in the global pandemic, shifting us to going, yes, learning can occur online, and that's possibly a very smart move for many. So on Seek, you can go onto seek.com and other job sites. But if you go onto Seek and do a search for learning design or learning designer, you can also type in other terms such as instructional designer or educational designer, learning experience designer. So these are different job titles, all in the same area that this degree leads to. And I haven't done it myself in the last week, but I know a little while ago we did this search and there was over 10,000 jobs being advertised in the broad area. Now, of course, a number of those are asking for you to have experience already in the industry, but there's also quite a number of those which are entry level. Now, if we look across all the different sectors and that learning designers are working in, we sort of identified there's around about $100,000 average salary for learning designers in Australia. And just to let you know that there's a lot of career progression. So learning designers move on into interesting ways up through the career into different management positions and directorships. And there's even an increasing number of chief learning officers, CLOs, across a number of large organizations. So the CLO is a recognition by companies that used to have CFOs and CIOs and these very senior executive positions. The CLO is an interesting position that we're seeing more and more of because organizations are realizing that unless they can educate their workers and support their workers, then their business suffers. And so that recognition that learning is really important is good for us as a profession, of course. So you're here to find out a little bit more about the course, and you can certainly throw some questions into the Q&A panel, and you can ask questions, and some of my wonderful colleagues will answer, or they'll throw the question to me. So please do use the question and answer panel to throw us questions, right? But let me go on right now while you're doing that to tell you a little bit about the course. So This bachelor's degree, the Bachelor's of Learning Design and Technology, is a 3-year full-time course. So you could do it in a part-time format, but it would take longer. We start in February, so semester 1. So at Monash, we have a 2-semester format for this degree, semester 1, semester 2. And then we go on to the next year and we start again, semester 1, semester 2. And that starts around February. The degree itself is problem-solving focused, so we try to throw real-life, authentic problems that you can try to figure things out. While there is theory and there are specific knowledge and skills that you need to develop, we're always focused on going, well, how do you use this in the workplace and in your profession? How can you build upon this skill? Designers of all types, no matter what sector they are, and so it's equally true of learning designers, that they're creative thinkers. To design something means that not only are you good at problem solving a context, a problem, an issue that's coming at you, but you can be creative in turning around and going, well, I'm going to take all these different ideas and come with a creative solution. In this course, we work hard to make sure that all of the things that we teach are industry relevant. So we went out and spent a long time talking to employers and to many instructional designers and learning designers who are working across sectors to find out what they wish they knew before they started. And from the employers, we've asked them what they feel is something that they would really want to employ. And so with that in mind, that shaped how we created this course and the kinds of skills that we built into it. Oh, the one last thing is to go is that this course is based primarily at Clayton campus in Melbourne. So this is an indicative course map. You can certainly access on our website. This is just in a prettier format. And you can see that in year 1, we have semester 1 and semester 2. And in semester 1, we've got these 4 boxes, and these represent 4 units. So we call our classes units. So each of these units will have their own assessments and their own teachers. And so the way to read this map is these darker blue squares are the units that are core skills for the Bachelors of Learning Design and Technology. So these teach you those industry-specific skills that we have written and created along with industry. The lighter blue-coloured squares are units that we've identified from other faculties that also bring really important industry skills, such as game design, web fundamentals, digital audio and video creation, graphic design. So these things we've recognized. There are some brilliant people in our university who are based in other faculties. And so those faculties deliver you those specific skills. The cells that's in this lighter purple color are elective spaces. So we recognize that actually every person is different in what they really want to pursue and what makes them tick. So along with our core units that deliver you these industry skills, you can also choose your own electives. We've curated a list of electives that you can choose from, but if you don't like those, well, more importantly, if you are passionate about other topics, then you can simply let us know and suggest what you might like to do otherwise. We'll talk about that in a moment. We'll talk about electives in a moment, but just right now, let's talk about these units that are core part of the course to give you a sense of the kind of things that you'd learn. So if we go semester by semester, then what we can sort of see in the first semester, we set you up with all the foundational knowledge and skills so that you can engage with learning designers. We have guest learning designers and senior learning designers constantly coming into class to share their experience, their, and the kinds of challenges that they deal with and how they solve them. So we work through the foundational knowledge and processes of learning designers so that you can understand those conversations, you can engage with learning designers. You also learn about key principles such as equity and inclusion and diversity, universal design principles. And that sets you up with the idea of going, we value everybody's learning. So how can we design to assure that no matter who your learner is, no matter what need they have, that you have an understanding of how to start to tackle that learning experience need. In semester 2, you branch out and you start exploring how younger learners work. What kind of learning theories and motivations do younger learners engage in? Most of learning design profession is focused on adult education. So in the workplace, in the community, etc. But there is a growing demand for learning designers who can help organizations create learning resources and experiences for younger learners. For instance, the Alana and Madeline Foundation and the Office for E-Safety Commissioner, these organizations are concerned about young people's safety. And so they have learning designers creating resources for those younger learners. And so they need a learning designer who can understand how to develop that. So in semester 2, you branch out and you start to understand that while you're also learning about graphic design, for instance. In year 2, we start to get very specific in getting you to create more and more learning design materials, including using multimedia interactive learning design. So you can do interactive learning experiences. You learn what's the most effective video and audio formats and how to create interactive games and quizzes and other kinds of ways in which to engage with your learners. You learn about learning design methodologies, like design thinking and being able to engage in agile frameworks. In semester 2, we engage with assessment and feedback. And these kinds of issues, which are really important, right? I mean, none of us like to be assessed, but it is an important step in understanding whether the learner has attained the goals that you've been designing for. At the same time, in semester 2, we also get you to go out on placement. So we will partner you up with a business or organization that sort of suits you, and you can experience how to be being a learning designer in the workplace. And in that first industry engagement, your main job will be to learn and interview and observe from the learning designers. And you'll have small tasks to create learning objects. In year 3, you'll be given whole tasks, like whole learning experiences that you have to develop for, or within your a learning design team that you'll be placed with. So we are working hard to ensure that by year 2, you have all of the skills to work independently within a team. And by year 3, not only can you work independently, but you can actually create whole products and you get those experiences in those teams. In year 3, we also expose you to skills such as how to specifically teach within a classroom as well, a classroom of adult learners. Because often learning designers will lead training, or they'll be developing materials for trainers to lead their training, right? So you need to have those experiences. But we'll also be doing the things which don't sound very exciting, but they are very important, and they're a daily concern, is around the ethics, law, and governance of learning design and educational technologies. Because no employer wants to employ someone that doesn't really understand issues around copyright and those kinds of things. So we are assuring that by the time you graduate, you have all of the key understandings that you need. I did mention electives before, and you can choose electives, and we've curated a bunch of electives from around the university that we think are really quite relevant and interesting for you, from programming to developing 3D and VR learning experience environments and games programming. But that's the IT side of things. But you might be a bit more interested in, say, design and communication. So you could use those elective spaces to do things like creative visualization and digital publication, and media. There's media challenges and writing labs from the communication studies division within arts. But you might be, for instance, interested also in psychology and in the people side of things. So you could be looking, for instance, at units from our business and economics faculty around organizational behavior and organizational change and project management. Or you could be looking at psychology and exploring psychology units. Now, if these units don't meet your passion, for instance, you might be really fascinated by music and learning design, or languages and learning design. Well, you can identify units across the many hundreds of units at Monash, and you might say, oh, I'm really interested in Chinese language. I would love to study in my elective space a series of units on the Chinese language, because I think that's going to be great with my learning design studies. And we will be cheering you on, because it's wonderful to identify a passion area. So the elective space is there for you. We've curated some. We think these are brilliant, but we're definitely open for you to suggest your own passion areas as your electives. Okay, kicking along. I did mention about industry engagement. So we will assure that you have some real life work integrated learning opportunities. These are likely to be on-site, where you go and work in a team at a physical location, but there is also opportunity for virtual internships or virtual work integrated learning opportunities, because we recognize not everyone can be mobile to get into your workplace. In learning design as a profession, what we generally find is that most learning designers who I certainly work with across different sectors spend at least a few days a week working from home. It's a highly mobile kind of workforce and flexible. And we've even got, excuse me, many instances of learning designers who work internationally. So they'll live in one country, but they'll work for an organization in another. So it is a really interesting and flexible space to be, especially once you've established your ability to work as a learning designer. Now, our industry-based placements are organised by our professional experience team. So you don't need to go and find a place to do your professional experience. And we'll support you and the workplace so that you can have the most effective learning experience. Now, the other thing that along the way is that you'll be engaging with other students to deliver products for industry partners through the Monash Innovation Guarantee. This is an opportunity that is absolutely brilliant. We've got students right now who are taking up this opportunity. So they work, so this is a optional thing that you can choose to do, and they work with a group of other students who then allocated to a industry partner. And as an interdisciplinary group of students, you work to solve that partner's problem or need. And so as a learning designer, you join that team of other students and you work together to come up with creative solutions. So it's that Monash Innovation Guarantee is absolutely brilliant. It's really exciting and well worth to explore. Okay. Just checking the chat window just to make sure that there's no question that's specific that I need to answer. No, not just yet. I'll come back in a little moment. Okay, so who might this course suit? Well, you, because if you've logged in, then you're already interested, so I'm sure it's going to suit you. But look, if you're interested in sort of the kind of creative puzzle of trying to create meaningful, useful, beneficial experiences for others, and this is the place you've got to be, right? And because the thing is, it looks so different in so many different contexts. You could be creating materials for young learners so that they can be safe online. Or you could be creating materials for people who work in a bank so that they can work together more collaboratively, so that they can serve their clients more effectively. You could be creating materials in military contexts, you know, for people who are learning how to refuel planes. All of these things are up for grabs. So it's up to you to decide at the end of the day, the most fundamental bit is, are you interested in creating meaningful, useful, effective, impactful experiences for others that helps them grow and achieve things? You might be connected, for instance, with the idea of education. You might think, you know what, I sort of am interested in education, but I don't necessarily want to be a school teacher. I want to maybe um, work in education, but not directly in classrooms teaching children. So then this degree might be something that you're interested in, because you don't directly teach children in this. You're still involved in education. You're still really keenly involved in making sure learning experiences work well, but you're not that teacher. Your passion might also be in psychology, that you're interested in other people, or in design process. You like that creativity of figuring out what are all the contextual issues and how can we come to solutions. Technology might be your thing. You might be into creating media, video, audio. You might be interested in creating interesting simulations. Or it might be communication, that you're just really interested in being able to communicate with others. So learning design really ticks all of those boxes. You don't need all of them, but those are the different kinds of passions that you might have as you proceed through. Sorry, I got a little bit lost there. Those are the kind of passions you might have as you sort of think through whether or not you're going to join this course. So I mentioned before about teaching. So look, you can't become a school teacher with this degree. To become a school teacher, you need to do the Bachelor's of Education or a Master of Teaching. With this degree, the Bachelor of Learning Design and Technology, we're not about teaching in a school, but we're about transforming those learning experiences across all the different kinds of sectors. Okay. So I think I've just saw a chat window pop up with a few questions. Let's see. Okay, so one of the questions is, oh, okay, see, I was looking in the wrong window. There you go. One of the questions is, does this course cover UX design? So user experience design. So it's an interesting question. I love the fact that you know what UX design is means that I suspect you'll get a lot of benefit out of this course. So UX design, by the way, you could also choose specific units on it in the elective space. But in the broader sense, UX design is the user experience design, is the way of knowing how you engage with technologies like digital environments, but also can be other environments. And how can that experience, that interaction, the windows, the buttons, the flow of text, media, navigation controls, or how do all of these things impact the user's experience? Well, from day one, from the very first lesson in semester one, you'll be given a challenge of how can you teach someone something in 2 minutes. And from that, we start to straight away identify that there are user experience issues that we need to deal with when you try to whack out a learning experience straight away. And we also use that same example to pull out a whole bunch of other problems. So from day one, we are interested in this issue. So, and in year 2, you develop more skills around media creation, interactive learning experience creation, as well as other design processes. So you'll be unpacking user experience design. So it's a long answer to say, yes, we deal with it. What we don't do is we don't have a unit called UX, and we don't set a textbook on UX. You learn it through a learning experience design lens, not from a classic IT lens of UX. Hopefully that helped answer. It's a bit of a long answer. Feel free to email me if you want to know more details. So the second question is, will we learn the applications technology that is specifically used by the industry? So you'll learn a lot of the applications, but there are some which are just out of the reach of what a classroom can achieve. So there are a couple pieces of software that are over $1,000 a license per person or per seat. But what we're organizing is that not only will you get demonstrations of it and you'll be able to work with people who do work with these technologies on a day-to-day basis, but we're also trying to organize that the partners that you engage with will have that so you get more experience. So there's just a couple of pieces of software which are very specific and very expensive, but all the day-to-day usual software from Adobe creation suites to other kinds of media creation suites and learning management platforms, you will have access to. In fact, in semester one of year one, we give you, for instance, a learning management sandbox. So you can create your own learning experiences within a whole learning management system. Our students are required to do an internship. So I might have used the word internship before. I'm a little bit old, so I use some old terms sometimes. So what it is, it's a placement or work integrated learning experience. There are two of them, one in year two and the second one is in year three. Each of these is around about 15 days worth. I think the first one is 15 and the next one's 20 days or something like that. And we work with you to make sure that you're comfortable with the partner that you work with. So yes, you do need to do this industry experience, but it can look very different according to different people. So for instance, if you're already working and you can't take out 15 days from so 3 weeks from your current work, we are expecting that you are able to negotiate with the partner to perhaps do 1 day a week or 2 days a week or something for 5 weeks or whatever it might work out to, whatever the math is. And also remember that we also think that you will be able to, well, we know you'll be able to do also virtual placements as well. So we've said, okay, we want to make sure that you do have hands-on experience and that you have seen a variety of different learning experience contexts, but we also recognize that many of our students, for instance, are working, have different kinds of duties, might be living in different locations around Australia. And so therefore these kinds of things can impact on what you do. So hopefully that's an answer for you and hopefully it's exciting. We will work to make sure that this is a great experience. The fourth question, okay, it seems that a learning designer will need experience and knowledge in a specific field if he wants to design learning opportunities for people who work in that field. Okay. So the question is basically saying, like, so if you're going to, it's a really good one. I think you'll like the answer to this. So for instance, I was just talking to someone who literally was helping military develop learning resources for how to refuel a military plane. The learning designer who was doing this work had no idea of aeroplanes. Okay. But they have content experts that they work with. So the content experts who worked, in the military, who then provided all of the expert knowledge and then also did the reviews of it to go, oh yeah, that learning experience really works well because it helps us understand this and do that. The learning designer doesn't bring the content expertise, but brings the deep understanding of learners, learning, motivation, media in terms of instructional media, and brings all that stuff that a content expert who knows everything that you need to know about refueling a plane. But what they don't know is how you teach it, right? Because that's why they've come to a learning designer. So learning designers, I've interviewed a number over the recent weeks actually for a different project, and it's come up a few times that they actually, one of the things that they get excited about is like it's a whole new, so every time they step through the door for a new contract, or if they're with an organization they're given to a different project, they say it's really quite exciting because they're constantly learning, they're constantly challenged by new ways, like, well, how are we going to teach this? Oh, a simulation is going to be best. So hopefully that helps answer that question a little bit, that you don't need to be the expert in that field, but you need to have the skills of a learning designer where you can get that information and know how to most effectively design it for learning. One of the things that we do in this course is actually we have some of the course set up so that we teach you how to get that information most effectively from the content experts. So we help you figure out what's the best way to do it. And sometimes it's about how you ask the questions, and others is to do with the templated format, etc. So we're setting you up for that. So another question is, what would an average week look like studying learning design? Isn't it an everyday class? No, it's not. Okay, so if you're a full-time student, let me go back. Let me go back to here so you can see what we're talking about. So in semester 1, you can see there's 4 units. So if you're a full-time student, that means you've got 4 units, okay, or 4 subjects, 4 classes, however you want to call them. Each of these classes, or for each of these units, are likely to have 1 class a week. Sometimes you might have a short lecture and a tutorial for each of these, okay? So it depends on the particular unit. So you can imagine straight away that that means in terms of class time, actually going into class and being in a class, it probably only works out to something like maybe 2 days worth in total. Okay, and I'm being very loose here because different units have slightly different requirements. 2 days in total of sort of being in class. The rest of the week is where you're studying and working on assignments and maybe jumping into the learning management system and doing some of the quizzes or some of the activities, watching the videos that we provide, etc. So if I talk more specifically, let's say the foundations of learning design and technology, which we just finished our last class of the semester today, those students turned up each week for 12 weeks for a 2-hour on-campus class. And in that class, we play some learning design games to develop out some creative problem-solving skills. Then we move across into some of the core theory that's related to the readings. And when we generally try to create something or do something with those skills to sort of solidify what we're learning. So that's a 2-hour kind of class. In addition to that, when they're not in class, they're doing the readings. So usually there's like 1 chapter, maybe 2 small chapters or readings each week. There's some, and there's usually, we've got a video in this class. We have videos of learning designers talking about their work, showing the kind of problems that they're dealing with, relating it to the readings. And we then have some communication. We might have a discussion forum where we're throwing backwards and forwards some questions, and the students are slowly working on their assignments. So you can see that there's a lot of time given over to you, getting on and doing your own studies, which can be a big challenge for people who might have come straight from school, where you have like 5 days of schooling. University is more freeing. A lot more time is under your own control, but of course that means that you got to do it in your own. You got to figure out how you're going to balance that with all of your busy life. Okay, another question is, how long does an internship typically last? Okay, so again, so you can see in semester 2 we have this industry engagement part 1, and in year 3 semester 2 we have industry engagement part 2. I'm trying to remember the exact details. I think it's something like 15 days equivalent for part 1 and 20 days equivalent for part 2. So what that means is for part 1, so in semester 2, year 2, you would come to class for that subject and we would set you up. We would teach you in like weeks 1, 2, 3, 4 in a normal class environment at university, getting you ready for going out on placement, ensuring that you've got all of your key concepts. There will be talking about what does it mean to work in a workplace, because many people who come to university might not have worked in, for instance, a corporate business setting or wherever. And so we make sure you've got those skills, and then you go off. And so one format is where you might go off for 3 weeks straight, and you just work at that industry placement for 3 weeks for the 15 days. Then you come back to campus and we will unpack what you've learned and build upon it. But we are flexible. So for some students, they'll do it differently. What they might do is they'll organise with their partner and they might work for a couple of days each week. And that might be purely online, or it might be one day at the office and one day at home, going into Zoom meetings or other, whatever software they're using, different online meetings, or working on site and moving from person to person, say in their media development team or whatever. So they might do that a couple of days a week. There might be different hours too. It might even be several mornings each week. So the format is going to be quite flexible. And the reason why it's flexible is because a lot of different businesses that employ learning designers employ them in different kinds of formats. Some work on site, some work at home, some work in project-oriented formats. So for instance, a learning designer might have, say, 3 or 4 projects that they're working on. And as a student, you might come in and they might decide that, it might be a better experience for you not to work across those 4 projects with your mentor that you work with. Okay, so you'll all have a mentor, a workplace-based mentor who will supervise and help and support you. They might decide that it's not as good experience for you to work across all 4 projects that your mentor's working on, but maybe only to get engaged with one of those projects and then follow that one project over time. So our industry engagement experiences are likely to be different from student to student. And so it's across that semester, and that is the core experience. While you're doing that, you will have other units that you will be studying, but they will also be flexible in that if you have to be on campus, at a business, at a placement for a couple of weeks, then you will have some flexibility in those other subjects in terms of the assessment and what's being learned. So it makes it a little bit more messier to juggle, but the idea is to give you the best experience possible so that you can get the most out of it, rather than racing in and racing out of a potentially great placement location. Okay, so I think the questions are stopped for the moment. And hopefully I've answered those questions, but definitely come and ask, or send emails or anything else. I'm going to just push on a tiny bit more into the information for you. And then I'll stop and answer any more questions you might have. So the entry requirements for the Bachelors of Learning Design and Technology, if you're looking at the ATAR, it's 78.35. And if you're looking at the IB, diploma program, it's estimated to be 25. The prerequisites are pretty good. So we're talking about VC English, units 3 and 4. And so that's at least 25 in English, or 25 in English other than EAL, or the IB English. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Ask some questions there if you are unsure. There are a number of pathways. So if you're not coming through in the ATAR sort of pathway kind of thing, you can have vet qualifications, so a Cert 4 or diploma, to be considered for entry, because we really value diverse students. So definitely explore that. We will try to work hard with you to identify how you can join this course. There are also other pathways that you can reach out and ask about. Okay. Oh, I got a great question that just came through about, will AI affect this field? Absolutely. What isn't AI affecting? And like every field, AI is both troubling and exciting. In this field, what we're going to see, like in most other places, that there's a degree of automation that gets resolved through AI. And there's also a degree of very specific skill sets that become open to the average user. So for instance, we do envisage that you will be able to, for instance, direct the editing of a video, the creation of an interactive resource, without necessarily needing to know every aspect of a particular software to do those things, but you'll be able to direct an AI to start creating those materials. What AI won't be able to do is to be able to effectively interrogate the context, the problem, the learner needs, and the learner theory that you need to apply to create effective learning experiences. You'll be able to say to an AI, and I'm talking about large language model-based AIs, but also others that we're starting to see being developed, you'll be able to ask an AI to create a PowerPoint, dear me, or a video on something. The thing is, a learning designer does a lot more than simply creating media. A learning designer does a lot of analysis work, working with the stakeholders, with the employer or the boss or whoever the contractor is, to identify what actually is going to be needed, what kinds of things are going to have impact, and how to document that. Then they apply their creative skill sets to work with several people, like content experts, which AI can't be, and then to be able to develop those learning experiences. So AI will change things. It will change some of the aspects of what you can achieve, which is exciting, but it won't remove the profession. So it's one of those things where it's just like every other part of society. In fact, what we'll find is that there's probably going to be a greater need of the skill set of a deeply thoughtful skill set that can direct AI to assuring business outcomes. Because remember, getting the job done is not enough. The learning experiences that you create have an impact on the business, and that gets documented through their, profit margins or whatever other KPIs they're looking at. So they need skilled people that can go, this learning experience is going to achieve this, and this is how we're going to know. Okay. So, we've got two questions there. I'll just have a look to see if there's any other questions. Oh, is there a limit on the number of students in the course? Absolutely not. Bring them on. This is fantastic. So we're really looking forward to expanding this course. We know there's a need. So as I said, we just finished our last class for this semester with the students. They're all buzzing. And they're really looking forward to carrying on that journey. And they're also looking forward to welcoming any new students that might be coming in next year. So they're looking forward to being the old hands in this work. When you join this course, I will be one of your teachers. Hopefully that's a good thing for you. We have a lot of fun in our classes because really at the end of the day, it's about trying to figure out people to come up with creative solutions and their real life problems. And we start from day one. So we don't put you through weeks and weeks of theory and textbook reading without actually figuring out, well, how do I actually use this stuff? So there's no limit on numbers of students. Okay. So I've got a couple other questions coming in. Okay, as someone in high school, how can I immerse myself in the world of learning design before getting into the degree? Well, that's pretty exciting that you want to get involved before you even start the degree. I think one of the things that you can do if you're interested in it, first of all, of course, there's a lot of material online. You can look at a lot of blog sites, LinkedIn Learning, there's YouTube videos, there's other kinds of sites, because learning designers, because they're great at content creation and they want to share experiences, right? They're learning designers. So you'll find there's quite a lot of websites of learning designers sharing their experiences. So feel free to explore that. But what you'll find is learning designers are embedded everywhere. If you are at a school right now and you're interested in learning design, you could try, depending on your relationship with your teachers and everything, could try to actually say, can I take over some classes, as in create the materials, create the resource, create the experiences. You don't have to tell them that you think you can do better than them. But you can do that. But also, if you have got connections through your family or through your own work, you might go to those organizations that you might be involved in, maybe where you work, and ask them if they have learning designers. They also might call them trainers or professional development learners or instructional designers. And you can simply describe it in terms of who here creates the professional training resources or does the training. You can ask those kind of questions, because whoever you ask might not straight away know learning designer, because that might not be the title that the people are used in their workplace. Okay. So there's a question about specific requirements for international high school leavers to enroll in the course. And I might have to hand that over to some of my colleagues who are much more knowledgeable about the international sort of requirements there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer. I am one of Michael's colleagues, so I can help answer the question about international entry requirements. So there are no maths requirements for this course for international students. All you need to achieve is the English language test if you're not doing an English language international curriculum. But if you are doing an international curriculum, sometimes there will be an English language unit in the curriculum where if you meet a particular score, you do not need to sit the English language test. But let's say you're sitting the English language test, then if you're taking IELTS, you need a score of 6.5 overall and 6.0 in each individual band. So that's the most commonly asked question we have. But yeah, we accept a big range of international qualifications. Just head to our website for this course, Bachelor of Learning Design and Technology, and you will be able to see whether your country's qualification is listed there. If not, Michael will be sharing a slide later on where you can make a free phone call booking with us, and we will be able to answer your specific entry requirements question for you.
Thanks, Jen. And there's a question there about, are there scholarships available?
At the moment, we do not have specific scholarships for this course, but international students may be able to apply for a $10,000 study grant. And that is something you apply for when you apply for the course. So yeah, just apply for the course, and if you get an offer, you will automatically be considered for a study grant.
Mm-hmm. And there's another question for you as well, that someone started an early childhood education degree and they're looking to transfer. Do they need to do anything in particular?
If you're transferring from another course, you will need a 60% average in your university studies if you want to transfer. So yeah, you can do that. Yep. You just
Oh.
to have the minimum average that we need.
Hmm. So there's a question for me, I think, is if someone changes their mind after doing this degree for a bit, can they become a school teacher after the degree? Well, in order to become a school teacher, you do need to do a teacher education qualification, such as a Bachelor of Education or a Master of Teaching. So if you did, for instance, the Bachelor of Learning Design and Technology, and you realize at the end of it that actually you are really passionate about getting in front of students, particularly school students, and teaching, then what you would do is you would then go on to do a Master's of Teaching, which gives you advanced standing in some states in Australia as well. So that's the process that you would do. So let's see, are there any other questions? But on the screen, you'll see, as Jen mentioned, that if you need more help, you can use that QR code and the link. You can actually have a one-on-one phone call with Jen or someone else in our team, and they can explain so much about this course and help you figure out whether it's right for you and how you can enroll. But you can also email me or email the team, and they can pass the questions on to me if there are any specific disciplinary questions. Okay, and just checking the chat window. So, and the last thing to note is that there is an open day. So please do come along, and you can meet myself and others. And we'll also have, because I just talked to them today and they're all up for it, we'll also have our current Bachelor of Learning Design and Technology students there at Open Day as well. So you can meet them and talk to them about their experience of the course and not just have to listen to me. So come along to the open day, please. And there's a QR code there for you also to get more details about it. I do hope that you found the webinar useful. And again, if you have any questions, just let us know. I'll just check to see if there's any final questions, but I think that's us. Okay. Right. I think that's us. Thank you very much, everyone.